Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a terrific day ahead of you. In today's video, I have for you a very interesting one. First off, we're going to look at a new viewpoint on chip strategy, one which will employ patience and a bit of reactivity, something that hasn't been discussed too much on this channel, especially the latter, so far this season. Secondly, I will have specific player insights for the players I'm going to play. And in a week like this, where there's a lot of movement in all categories, right? Given people playing wildcards, free hits, a lot of transfers flying about, that will probably be more relevant than ever. And I'll also look at my transfer plans, not just for this week and for Game Week 6, but also other routes that I could be considering and that I may go down as well as transfers, of course. So a lot to look forward to. If you have been enjoying the video, then please consider clicking the like button, subscribe, and hype the video if you've got any left. All of that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for your support as always, and let's get into it. So far this season, I've spoken a lot about Wildcard 13 being my preferred window for the wildcard. And if not that, then maybe looking to play it around 7 or 8 when there's another big fixture swing. However, as more and more time goes by, I'm becoming increasingly likely, while still having a preference for Wildcard 13, to play it in a somewhat reactive sense. And I'm completely okay with that. The game is so different to how it's ever been, right? One, the user base, the player base, is more competitive than it's ever been. So to achieve a really good rank, we're going to probably have to do something a little bit different and play a little bit better this time around. And I think that means that maybe we're not so stuck in our ways at times with this wildcard chip, and we're able to pounce on opportunities. For me, at the moment, playing it this early with the current set of conditions, as I've spoken about in Everything You Need, and maybe I'll touch again in SYP, is not something that I'm looking to do. However, let's just say, argument's sake, next week, 5 injuries hit the board, and yeah, Wildcard 13 could look so attractive, and so could Wildcard 8. But the upside to playing it, because I have so much downside to not doing so, right, means that Wildcard 5 could be a great option. And I'm becoming more and more okay with doing that. Now, if I can hold it out to 13, I think that's great. But I'm just saying that I'm more open to the idea of playing it somewhat reactively in a moment and abandoning the prior strategy. What I would say is, whilst I'm looking to potentially be a bit more reactive with this chip, I also want to be patient. I don't just want to use it this week, for example, because there's a little bit more upside within my team. I want to use it in a spot where there is a lot of upside to using it. And I don't think in basically any spot that I've seen, Wildcard 4 justifies that bit of criteria this time around. So I'm looking to wait. I'm happy to stretch it out. Ideally, Wildcard 13, maybe Wildcard 8. But if it's in between those two sections, that's completely okay as well, right? If that's how it falls. I'm going to open that route up to myself a little bit more. And I think this is a really underrated strategy at the moment, because we're all looking at windows, for example, say just 4, 8, 13, but just being able to play it off the cuff in 11 and not always planning so long term with the entire structure, I think is completely okay. And yeah, as I say on the bottom line, I just really don't like playing it this week. But the fact that I don't think there's much upside associated to it, for a number of reasons, but mainly because the player pool isn't that strong at the moment, right? It doesn't look like this person, oh, they're definitely going to haul. Even Liverpool, right? We don't really know which one of Wirtz, Gakpo, Salah, Ekitike is gonna hurt them. Spurs, they play West Ham. Spurs started off so strong, but then obviously lose to Bournemouth and get battered by Bournemouth. West Ham obviously don't, but then have a pretty decent game against Forest and win 3-0. Matthias Fernandes is there. They've got a new 6. Paquetá looks like a completely new player. Bowen can play in his more preferred position now. They've signed Callum Wilson. So it's difficult to interpret that game in the same way it would be in 10 weeks' time. So with all that uncertainty, I don't think playing this chip at the moment is the best idea. But the main reason that I wanted to make this slide is just to discuss that I think being a bit more reactive with it, whilst being patient and still going through a good thought process, is completely okay. Considering I have a Nottingham Forest defender as well as a goalkeeper, I thought I'd just pair the two sections together, especially when they're so closely aligned. Looking at my defense, there's some really good parts to it this week, and there's some parts to it that you may not like as much. In terms of Sells and Dubravka, for me, I'm always going to trust the Nottingham Forest defense against the worst attack in comparison to Burnley, just because they're at home, right? So for me, Sells over Dubravka is a very easy decision, as I imagine it would be for a lot of you. Now, with the rest, this is, well, not really the rest, but mainly just Neco Williams. That's where you may not like it. For Sells, for example, you could consider, oh, he's got the save potential, and if he does clean, it'd be a huge haul. So you know what? That's okay. And with keepers, you kind of just keep him throughout. But maybe you don't like the fact that I've got Neco Williams, and I'm not choosing to do anything about it in my defense. So I shall explain. For me, I was always very comfortable benching Aït-Nouri. I've always had Man United scoring in this game. I think with the transitional threat of particularly Cunha and Mbeumo, coupled with maybe Mount in the first half, in the first 16 minutes, and the combinations that he offers, and the ability in the pockets, which will certainly be present against that Manchester City side. Then you've got Bruno's passing range as well behind that. All of that combined, just in general play, but mainly in transition, and City's weakness in defensive transitions for a number of reasons. I always had Man United scoring in this game. And apparently Aït-Nouri's injured anyway. So my hand is slightly forced. But this was always the strategy. So Neco Williams was always going to be in the 11. The first thing that makes me feel much better about this is, even though Ole Einer's injured and Neco Williams is naturally a right back, I think the new arrival will play at right back, and they don't really have any left back cover. Zinchenko's ineligible to play against his parent club, and I don't expect he'll use Morato in this wider defensive zone, as Nuno did once in pre-season. So I think you'll see Williams definitely play left back, and with Saka's injury, I think Madueke will be the right winger. Now, if you cast your mind back to Sunday at Anfield, well, Kirk has certainly picked up a lot of DEFCON because of Madueke. He finished on 9, very close to hitting the threshold. And Neco, especially at home, and Arsenal will have more of the ball, and Madueke will certainly be on a high confidence-wise after getting his first England goal. They're at home, they'll have more of the ball. He'll be able to go at him more. I think this is just a better set of conditions for Neco to provide DEFCON. And if it just so happens that, Sells makes 6 saves and Neco gets DEFCON and they concede 1, well, they're still going to finish on 4 apiece. And you know what? Even if they finish on 3 apiece with some saves and DEFCON, but they concede as well, a couple, that's not the end of the world, all things considering, right, from this fixture. I don't mind that. Now, I don't think they're going to get battered because I don't expect Ange Postecoglou to go completely all guns blazing, high line, all the way at the halfway line maybe, and then get Milenkovic and Marilla to protect that space when they haven't really been used to it, right? And the fullbacks inverting and all the challenges that will cause in transition. I don't think that'll be the case. I think you'll see a more pragmatic approach. So a clean sheet is not completely out the window, and if they do, it will be decent conditions for a haul. For either of them. I mean, Sells will have to make some saves. Williams, you know what? They probably don't score too many goals against this Arsenal side, so maybe it just comes from a Neco Williams cross or him popping up in the final third, right? And then he wouldn't have too much competition from other goal scorers for bonus. So as far as things go, with Arsenal's current attacking dynamics not being, and have not been for a while, what you'd want as an Arsenal fan, really, with the injuries they have, with the fact that you've always got this new manager bounce and players will want to prove themselves, and the general quality that Forest have, with a probably pragmatic approach, I don't hate the chance of a clean sheet. Do I think they'll get them? Probably not, honestly. But there's still a decent floor attached to this. Cucurella, I've seen some talk about him potentially being benched for Hato, given he's played both games in the IB. I feel like Cucurella is the type of guy just to want to play every game, more so than the average. His body looks very durable and sustainable over the course of a season, and he's in such good form, right? So I think he plays. And then Kirk has DEFCON potential with how aggressive he is, how willing he is to engage in the duel. And obviously, one of the better fixtures away at Burnley. And who knows, in this type of game, maybe more license to get forward as well. So the prospects for these two, especially Kirkes, I would say are really good. And the floor with the Nottingham Forest defenders isn't too bad. So all that being said, I don't think I need to make a transfer, even with Aït-Nouri potentially being injured and having to play double Forest defense away at Arsenal. Slightly different formation than you're used to seeing in FPL. But I did it this way because I wanted to show not only the midfield, but how the forward line, in particular Chris Wood, is relating to that, not only in terms of potential benchings and who finds himself in that first bench spot, but also who gets transferred out and what I'm thinking down the line. So Cunha, King, Salah and Jai, you can expect them there in the starting 11. And a quick note on Cunha, he posted a picture of him in the gym last Sunday with the caption Sunday, and he tagged Manchester. So I'm just assuming, based off that, based off the reports all sounding fairly positive, that when Amorim speaks today/tomorrow, depending on when you're watching this, he is going to say he's good to go. In which case, I love his prospects for the similar reasons that I discussed earlier in the video with with Manchester City conceding against Manchester United. So those 4 you can very much expect in the side. Josh King, I mean, I doubt Marcus Silva benches him, even with Kevin and Chukwueze coming in. I doubt both of them start from the off. I don't think he'll play back 5, so there's still those 3 attacking spots. And following his disallowed goal and the performance, I think it warrants giving him another go. So I think he'll start this Leeds game. Hopefully he does. Salah, and Njai scored 2 goals in 2 games. He could have had more. It's home fixture against a side that are struggling at the moment. Still don't have Anana or Kamara back. So I'm certainly looking forward to playing him, and there's nothing really to discuss there. But with Marlon and Wood there is, so I will now show this slide. So even with having 2.9 million in the bank, it's not as straightforward as just selling Daniel Marlon for whoever I want. I must consider the overall strategy and what I'm going for, and then what players are potentially blocked by my moves now. So let's discuss the strategy first, and then we can discuss the Game Week 4 transfer. In Game Week 6, like so many, I'm looking at targeting Erling Haaland. Him in, essentially for Mo Salah, and then obviously I will have to take out Chris Wood to facilitate that and replace Salah in the midfield. Now, that's the key here. Who do I want in that midfield spot from Game Week 6 and beyond? Well, Cole Palmer has a great run from 9. And if I am to stick to the strategy of wildcarding in 13, with everything that I'll need to do before that, and probably have to constantly readjust the team, or at least do it quite often, the restructuring to get Palmer would be very difficult if I don't pick him there and then, or I don't have the funds available to myself, especially if I'm looking at holding Cunha for a while and this premium defensive structure, which I am. Maybe not all 3 6.0s, but certainly Cunha and a couple of those, right? Definitely Cunha and a couple of those. Which would mean that in my personal case, if I'm to sell Daniel Marlon for anyone above 5.9, Palmer would basically be blocked. And I don't think I want to do this, right? Now, let's just say I didn't care about Palmer too much. What would the other options be? And they're mainly the 2 on screen. 1, Cody Gakpo, and 2, Antoine Semenyo. So it's really, do I really want Gakpo or Semenyo now? So much so that I'm willing to block the route into Palmer down the line, who could be a very good long-term hold. And honestly, no. Gakpo's prospects this week are great, right? Burnley away, in good form, great. Even Everton at home next game week, really good. Really good. But when I have already got Njai, who I think could potentially score in that game, taking us away his clean sheet point, he's not really there for DEFCON. Maybe slight reduced expected minutes for Gakpo at some point due to, facilitating Isak if he wants to play Verts there, if he decides for like a different formation with Ekatike and Isak. Not that I think it's really going to happen. I still think Gakpo's minutes in the short term are good. But those little worries, alongside the fact that after 5, I don't think I definitely want him, and he's blocking Palmer, I don't think it's worth it. Semenyo looks unbelievably good. And if there's anyone who should have scored a century in terms of points by now, it would be him. I mean, the chance that he put over the bar with the header against Spurs, the chance where he slipped Tavernier in, a couple of moments in transition, a couple of the second balls that they won, and how he could have returned from there, all against Spurs. Then you've got the chance he blazed over the bar in the first half against Wolves. In the second half against Wolves, did something very similar. Obviously got a brace Game Week 1. Already got an assist in Game Week 2. All of that combined, he could have scored so many points. And the fixtures that are coming up for them, stylistically, I think they work wonderfully well. Especially Brighton. That should be such an interesting game to watch. Newcastle in a similar fashion. But I have Evan Nilsson. And with me already having Evan Nilsson, and not really wanting a Bournemouth double up, even though they look great going forward, they really do. Not so much against the blocks, but in transition, in these faster paced games with this most space, absolutely. Do I want to double up? And the answer is no, right? Especially when it blocks Palmer. So I've settled most likely on going for one of the cheaper guys so that I can afford it. Now, if the prices were to stay the exact same, I would be looking at only being able to bring in someone who's 5'8". So let's say I do bring in Paquetá, who's 5'9", and the prices stay the same. I'll be locked out of Haaland and Palmer anyway. So who knows, maybe then I'll take a hit in Game Week 6, right? Just bring a transfer forward. What I'm hoping is Palmer, according to Fantasy Football Hub, is about 80% of the way of dropping. If he doesn't return this time, or he starts on the bench and whatnot, basically if he doesn't return, I think he'll drop. In which case I'll be able to afford it. I mean, Haaland's probably not going to go up 0.1 before Arsenal. Wood's probably not going to go down before Burnley, and Salah will probably just stay the same, right? So then I'll be able to afford it. And out of the two, originally I was more on Rangers. But with Paquetá's potential DEFCON and penalties, both which Rangers doesn't really have, and the fact that he doesn't have Europe, he's definitely not going to get rotated. I can see him playing a more 10-like role as Potter appears to have switched to a back four. He has a new six. He has Matías Fernandes. So the defensive responsibility for Paquetá is not in the same capacity as it was before. He looks really good creatively. And in general, he just looks revitalized following the court case being finished up. I think I'm going to risk it, go Paquetá, and hope that Palmer just drops at some point. And you know what? Maybe I don't even get Palmer in Game Week 4, but at least or Game Week 6, but at least I'll have the option to. So that's my whole thought process with the team. Obviously, this is Marlon being taken out, and this is great because finally I can actually have 8 attackers in the team. And when your 8th is Josh King as well, and Fulham have recruited, I definitely want a more stable core of 7. With the Rangers, do I think he can return against United? Yes, absolutely. Stylistically, I think it's a very good game for him. They pose something similar to what Wolves did United, and Rangers can definitely profit in that sense. Does he have great fixtures from 6? Yeah. My only one concern, and don't get me wrong, I really like him, but the only concern I had with him is what if one game in 7 and 8, 4, 5, 6, in 8 and beyond, he gets rotated. With me not looking to wildcard that early, ideally still 13, that wouldn't be ideal. But overall, his prospects are really good. I really like him as an asset. I still may go there, but I'm probably going to go Paquetá. Just marginally edges it. More so for the DEFCON, right? Even more so than the penalties, more so DEFCON, just because that flaw is there. And if he is to play with such confidence, I think he'll be more aggressive in his mannerisms defensively, and he'll want to engage in the duel more, and DEFCON can be sourced from there. So that's the current plans. Oh, one more thing. The reason why on the bottom line it says /7.1 million mid is if I do decide in Game Week 6 to get Haaland, which I probably will do, but also want Isak instead of having Salah, and that's my Liverpool cover. Which, if we think about it, if Salah's output is going to decline and the system isn't going to favour him in the same way that it did last season, then Isak looks at 10-4 at 4.1 million cheaper, a fantastic safety net, one to cover Salah, but then also in terms of his own upside as well, right? You've got that, so that's great. And if I were to do that, then I could upgrade Evan Nilsson to him in 6 or 7, and I would need to make sure that my mid is 7.1 or less. And not going to a Gakpo or a Semenyo now means that instead of it having to be a cheap mid, I get the option of all those guys. By that point, one may present themselves. So I'd much rather keep my options open. Rangers and Paquetá are more than good enough at the moment to compete with Semenyo and Gakpo, even if they have such good short-term upside, those guys. And as such, I'm happy to do it. So that's the plan. Likely Marlon out for Paquetá. You know what? I was going to end the video recording right there, but I just realized I didn't say one thing about Paquetá, and that is the fixtures. Spurs at home, Palace, Everton, and Arsenal is not pretty. It is not pretty defensively. And I think if I go that, I'll just accept it, right? The one thing with Spurs is, even though under Thomas Frank they've looked much better defensively, I don't think that they're not Arsenal, right? And they're not going to play in the same way as Arsenal. Now, if they did, it would be a completely different proposition. But I don't think they go to. And West Ham are at home. That game is under the lights. I think that's a big deal for them, especially following a 3-0 win. There'll be a lot of Somerville's back. He brings a lot of excitement to the team. There'll be a real good feel-good factor there, right? So in that sense, I don't mind the Spurs one too much. Palace, if Wharton's not back for that one, and Sarr's still not there, I also don't mind it too much. I think Palace could go on a bit of a slump without them. Everton, well, they haven't actually been defending that well as of this season. And one of the reasons for that, in my opinion, is Dewsbury Hall in the middle, which we'll discuss at a later date. And then Arsenal, well, yeah, that's just a bit rubbish, but I guess I'll have to just roll with the punches for that one and hope something happens. Whereas Tijani Raiders, Burnley at home in 6, Brentford away in 7, even United at 4 is really solid for him. So that's certainly an advantage for Rangers. So, as discussed in the last section, it will very likely be Marlon out, right, for Paquetá. And then, of course, I'm not bringing him in to bench him. So who would I bench? And it's probably going to be Chris Wood. With his flight back from New Zealand, even though I checked it, I guessed at what time he'd likely be back, and he's actually got a decent amount of time, given it's that early game in the Saturday fixture, and given I don't think he's really the Ange Postecoglou number 9 type, if he is to get hooked early at like 60 something away at Arsenal, it's just very much looking like a 2-pointer, right? So I think I'll bench him. If I had to play him, it's not the end of the world, but I think I'd bench him. Game week 5, I'll start Wood, but he's on chopping block for 6. He's going in 6. Even if Postecoglou says he's starting against Sunderland, I'm selling him for Haaland, right? So he will go there, and then he'll go to the first bench, and Paquetá will come in, and then that'll be the team. João Pedro, I mean, for most players, the flight time and the time he's arriving from Brazil, which is late compared to what most people do when they go on IB, would be a challenge. But for him, I just feel like he's the type to just get on with it, not affect him too much, and just keep going. So I think he'll be completely okay. And I think we've got a real chance of hurting Brentford as well and scoring like 2, 3, maybe I'm thinking about 3, right? So in that sense, love the option. And Evan Nilsson, Bournemouth should have had more against Spurs. He should have had more against Spurs. A striker I really like. No way I'm benching him. A fixture where I think both sides will want to engage in a fairly attacking game model. As such, it's just pretty easy for me to start him. So yeah, that will likely be the team come Saturday afternoon. There won't be many times in the season where for my team there will be as little of a debate for captaincy as there is this week. Now, if you actually look at it, right, Salah's captaincy away at Burnley, on paper it may appear super brilliant. I'm not overly excited about it just because there's still that spread of output at Liverpool, right? And the system hasn't really favoured him. So there is that little bit of downside there. But considering quality of player, considering quality of team, hopefully it should go okay. And in terms of maybe the other 4 guys who could contend for it, Cunha, Njai, Evan Nilsson, João Pedro, I all really like their prospects this week. João Pedro obviously has the vice armband, but not enough whereby I would captain them over Salah for Burnley away. I was surprised at how many people are going elsewhere. I understand it because he hasn't been in the greatest form and the system isn't favouring him. But for me, this fixture is way easier than the other 3 they've had. And I just don't think it's worth the risk to go elsewhere. Floor's too high, ceiling's too high. And with the other guys, the ceiling isn't high enough, nor is the floor for me to be like, you know what, I can bet against Salah here. So fairly simple. Salah captaincy, and we will go from there. That is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly hope you enjoyed. The usual ending screen is not being used this time around, but this slide is back because I really, really hope you consider what I have to say about the wildcard. I really do think that maybe even Sunday evening, if not gaming 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, there will come a point where you regret the usage of Wildcard 4. And I really am trying to steer you away from it. If you use it, regardless, I wish you the best of luck. I just don't think it's going to be the best strategy. And like I said, I just wanted to drum home this point. But with that being said, if you did enjoy the video, a like on it, a subscribe, a hype if you have any left and you would consider doing that, that would all be absolutely magnificent. Thank you very much for all your support. As always, I shall be back for solving your problems. Anything you'd like, leave it in the comments below. Very much looking forward to filming that, and there'll be quite a big to discuss considering the nature of EYN this week. Have a terrific day ahead of you, and I shall see you very soon. Goodbye.